Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of SharePoint TV. For the ones of you that are here for the first time, this is a really fun and informative a 1 hour show that we're going to have really two amazing guests on, and we're going to talk a bit about Power BI, a bit of the Power Platform, and many other fun things together with a few bad jokes. And that has already started a bit in the minutes before we started recording. But let's start right away. We're gonna first introduce our show sponsor, Valo Intranet, who's really kind enough to sponsor this show and make it all happen. Then we're going to introduce our guest. And we're back. Let's introduce our guest for today. I actually have two of my really good friends on the shows, which makes it a really fun way to end the year. Jason Himmelstein and John White, in no particular order, because I know how those two are. So I have
that was an age order. That was age order.
Oh, I'm not gonna be the
the
one.
best for last.
I'm not gonna be the one making jokes about age, since I think you guys have more IT experience than my age. Each one of you, not combined. So
My little finger.
Yeah. That's wow. Thanks for making me feel old there, Vlad.
hey, Jason, you're the one that brought
son
the
would like to
subject.
play kickball with you later if you have time there, buddy. But thanks, seriously, thanks for having us today. This is going to be a lot of fun. We've got some fun stuff to talk about. And as I tweeted earlier today, there's even some cool stuff that the Power BI team just published yesterday that we thought we might chatter about.
Awesome. Well, we have quite a few people watching live. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Remember to post your questions. If you have any questions about what John or Jason are sharing, make sure to ask them in the chat, and we're going to get to them. But just so the people watching can get to know you a bit better, can you guys introduce yourselves? And I'll start with John this time.
My turn, huh? Yeah, I'm John White. I'm CTO and co-founder of a company called Unlimited Viz. We make a software called tyGraph, and I've been through many technologies over the years, but involved in SharePoint since about 2001, and Power BI since it was before Power BI. So kind of like to bring those worlds together as much as possible. And our product, which does analytics for Office 365, is all delivered through Power BI. So again, best of both worlds.
Awesome. And Jason?
Hi, Jason Himmelstein. I am an MVP in Office Apps and Services and in Power BI, located in San Antonio, Texas, and just enjoying the wonderfully warm weather from Christmas time, holiday time here in Texas, because I know you guys are both in Canada, right?
It's not warm here.
It's actually snowing here in Montreal today.
Yeah.
It's snowing here
I'm
too.
wearing shorts and flip-flops down here in Texas, so I've got that going for me, and we'll be playing golf on New Year's Day and all those kinds of fun things. It's a lot of fun.
Do the same thing,
doing all these. Yeah,
Flip-flops
you
inside.
certainly can.
I got my
You'd have
Oculus
to
Rift,
color the
so
ball, I think, because it get lost in all that white. But
No, I got my Oculus Rift so I can play golf inside and everything.
Well, it's a lot of fun. It's a fun time of year. Just got back from my last work travel of the year, and just looking forward to bearing down and getting into doing a couple last shows of the year on the Bifocal podcast with John as we look at some of our predictions from last year and start figuring out what we think is going to happen next year. So,
how many of them actually happened this year? What's your guys' win ratio at?
We haven't figured that out yet. You'll have to tune into the podcast.
Okay.
Somebody has to do all the analytics on that still, but we'll figure it out before we get to that episode.
That's right.
Awesome. Before we get deeper into the content, I just want to chat a bit how you're both coming a bit from the SharePoint world. I mean, I know John, even in the SharePoint world, was focused on BI, but you, Jason, were really on the IT pro side of things. And kind of as the cloud changed a bit the IT pro job, there's a bunch of choices out there where people can go, but you chose Power BI. What made you focus into Power BI?
Well, to be honest with you, I've been schizophrenic for a long time when it comes to technology. I've done BI in some form or fashion since I started doing SharePoint. In fact, my first SharePoint gig was to support a set of tooling that we built on top of SharePoint, starting with 2007, around earned value metrics. So it was all about business intelligence and all of that. So it's piqued my interest for a long time. I wrote a book on developing business intelligence apps for SharePoint with Dave Feldman, another MVP in the community. And, it's been just an interest of mine for a really long time. Started with Power Pivot when that was a thing, and Power View and all of that fun Silverlight stuff that you could do. And over time matured that and have followed the platform quite a bit. And while I've always been an IT pro and will continue to be so, the BI side of things just, it satiates that business side of my personality. I like to focus not only on the tech, but also on the business side of things. So that's how I make business decisions. As John likes to say in one of our sessions, business intelligence used to be called decision support systems. So it's helping make business decisions. And that's why I find it so fascinating, is because you can tell a lot from the data that rather than just the gut feel.
Without data, you're just another person with an opinion, right?
Yes, sir. It's like belly buttons. Everybody's got one. It's just a matter of who shows you theirs.
I've never heard that version before, let's say.
Well, this is a family show, Vlad,
Yeah.
so I was trying to keep it clean.
Could be worse, yeah.
And how about you, John? I remember back when I was doing SharePoint 2010, 2013, reading your blogs on how to set up SSRS and how to set all of the infrastructure behind. Do you miss that part, or?
No, not for a second. Not for a second. If you go way back, I started Unlimited Viz with my business partner, Ed Sinez, back in 2006, believe it or not. And that's, when SharePoint 2007 was coming out, looking like, this is a big deal. You had the pie, right? Business intelligence was one of those slices of pie, one of the big core workloads on SharePoint. And we decided, we're going to focus in on that area because it'll be hard to commoditize that area first. That's literally what happened. We were a services company and zeroed in on that and became experts at all of the BI workloads around that. There were several pillars, right? SSRS, Power Pivot, Jason just mentioned, who he wrote that big long book. He spent a lot of time working on that book. I don't know that you want to read that book if you're going to put it in SharePoint 2019 today, but because it's all gone, right? I mean,
they wouldn't put it in SharePoint 2019, but it makes for a great doorstop and for a table prop. So
but yeah, as in 2016, things started to change. That's when I did that series of blog posts, I think, that you're talking about, was for SharePoint 2016, because a lot of stuff changed and they didn't really care about documenting it too much. You can see all this stuff's kind of on its way out. But all at the same time, you had the rise of Power BI, which is really all that core BI stuff that was in SharePoint is just now. Essentially, it's externalized. The cloud is Power BI. On premises, it's either SSRS or Power BI report server. They're the same thing. So I've just kind of followed that along the way, and then we basically pivoted into being a software company back in 2014, and here we are today, full on as a software company.
Awesome. And I think for today's show, Jason, you recently built a really cool Power BI report around a question that a lot of people have. And I have a feeling this topic about licensing has come up way too often in this show, but it's something that people have questions about, so we can't ignore it.
We never get
As
questions about licensing, do we, Jace?
Oh,
We never have to talk
golly.
about that.
Yeah, well, that's a different kind of licensing. That's Power BI licensing.
Yes.
The thing that I built that Vlad's referencing, and I wrote a blog post about it. It's something that Microsoft used to give us. There used to be an Excel workbook. It was a number of years ago that allowed you to use some slicers and go through and figure out what license had what thing in it. And you could just go in by feature, you could go in by license. And I used that thing all the time and trying to help customers understand, oh, well, why doesn't this thing work? Oh, it's because you don't have the right license. Or, you can save a bunch of money by switching licenses to do this. So it was something I felt the need for. And Microsoft has shifted its model quite a bit over the past number of years. And they eliminated doing that because things were changing too rapidly. They put that out every couple of months. And now it's changing too rapidly. So they refer everybody off to docs.microsoft.com. And unfortunately, docs.microsoft.com, while it's a great site, it's got terrific information. Microsoft's able to rapidly update it. Format and function just wasn't there for me. I used to take that Excel workbook and go with conditional formatting, so it was quick and easy to be able to tell what things were in what license. And I could slice and dice and, Julian licenses, so to speak, be able to see what I was looking for. And it really angered me, to be honest with you, that this wasn't a thing anymore. And so out of spite, I decided to go ahead and do it myself.
It's a good motivator.
Do you want to share it on the screen, just so we tell live?
I can do that. So I was chatting with Mark Rackley, and just I was swearing like a sailor.
On purpose?
And yeah, I on purpose and everything. And I went ahead and built this. And because I was talking with him, I was like, well, forget it. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to build this myself. And so I did. So hopefully on the screen, you all are seeing, this is the Power BI desktop version of it right now. This is actually the web shareable version. And you can go out to, and we'll put the link into the chat here, but if you go out to, it's a URL shortener, jacehim.online/service descriptions. I think I'm sharing my screen. Am I not? Let's try that again. Let's make sure that I'm actually sharing it.
There we go. Now we can see it.
There you go. All right. Yay. All right. So this is the service description. If you, sorry about that, if I took it away and brought it back. It's important to know that this, and I'll show you a little bit of how I built it here in just a minute. This strips directly off the web. This is not being stored anywhere.
Live.
Well, Or we can just do little dances like there's hold music. No, no, I shouldn't sing. All right.
That would be bad.
Oh, looks like you won.
Are we back?
Back.
We got our sound.
Yeah.
Hey, Fred. Hey, Teen. Hopefully you could hear my my little singing there, and you didn't have to hum just on your own. So I'll back up just for a second here at the bottom of the screen, and I'm going to wiggle my mouse around up top here, so hopefully it's visible. And then right down here, middle of the screen at the bottom, I'm on page 2 right now. I was on the service description page before for Office 365 platform features. This is the SharePoint features. And then there is a third tab here because I get a lot of questions about Exchange feature availability. So again, if I clear this little filtery guy, and then I can come in and say, let's just look at E1, and then clicking on the control key, I can do a multi-select, or I can do a single select and just find one. Personally, I find multi-select to be a little bit easier. So control, and then it actually shows up with multiple things in there. All right, so that's that. So that's what I built. Again, I'll put it in the link here. That is at http://jacehim.online/service description.
Are you actually typing it?
I was actually typing that, yes, sir. So hopefully that and the link doesn't work. It is plural, so I apologize. I messed that up. Anyway, let's talk about how this thing is built. So there's the correct link. So we're going to look at Power BI Desktop first. And right now, there's a couple of things worthy of note. This is Power BI Desktop. There's a new version that just came out today. It actually dropped about 10 p.m. Central Time last night. So this is all cool new news. And one of the things that you'll find is it looks the same as the old version, even though we've been talking since November about the new Office ribbon. So one tip and trick for you about Power BI Desktop, and you want to download this through the Microsoft Store if you can. If not, you can download it through app.powerbi.com. At the top right, there's a downloads option. Or you can go search for Power BI Desktop download.
For somebody like me that doesn't do a lot of Power BI, what's the difference between getting it from the App Store or from the website, just the EXE?
You want to get it from the store.
So the answer to that question is things that are downloaded through the store, and this is for Store, the Microsoft Store. When you download apps in general, they bypass the need for elevation of permissions on the local desktop. So you don't have to go through that UAC prompt. So this allows you to install things safely without having to have administrator rights. So if you have a machine that is locked down by corporate, you will not have to elevate permissions and download a password and have all of those things. You can simply have it there, and then updates come in very cleanly and automatically happen. The other side, the EXE side, you would have to go and download it every time manually, and then go and run the installer, go through UAC, all of those things. So that's the difference between the two mechanisms. There's no difference in the product. It's just how you download and install it.
Okay. Does it have any auto update features or stuff like that for the store?
Yes, with the store there is.
Okay. Awesome.
Now, more often than not, because when I see the blog post hit, or I see it on Twitter, I want to go get it right away. So I have to open the store and go tell it to go update all, and then it'll go and pull it. But otherwise, within a day or two, it would automatically update in the background for you, and you'd get that latest version. The way to tell which version you're on, by the way, is under the Help and About section. And right here, you can see I'm on this version of the December update. So that came in just a couple of hours ago. Unlike most things, I'm happy to update Power BI Desktop right before having to do a demo, because I know it's going to be perfectly solid and awesome. So I mentioned earlier this new Office ribbon thing, and what we're seeing with the Office ribbon is actually it is the ribbon from Office. Right now, if you take a look at the ribbon here in Power BI Desktop, this is not a familiar ribbon to a whole lot of other people, and I do apologize. There's some construction happening just outside here, and I don't have control over it, so I'll go on mute in a few minutes. But I apologize for the background noise. Hey, John, do you want to explain this? How you go and do the preview features?
The preview features, yeah, it's really just a simple matter of going into the desktop. One of the options is preview features, and every month you'll get a few new ones show up. And as items go from being in the preview state to general availability, they'll drop off. But you'll oftentimes see in the desktop blog post that this new feature is now available, and you'll go to look for it, and you won't be able to find it. Well, that's because you'd have to turn that feature on. So you basically go into options, go into preview features, and it's just a checkbox that you need to turn on. You need to do that. It's not an account setting. It's a setting for that instance of Power BI Desktop. So if you've got one on another machine, you'll have to do it on that machine as well. But it's as simple as that. So turning on the new ribbon is a perfect example of that.
Okay, so you cannot turn it
We'll have
on
to do a
fully.
restart of Power BI Desktop, by the way. So I'm going to click OK and let it go ahead and do a quick restart. I'm not going to save changes to that file, though.
So quick question, John. So I cannot say always give me the preview features.
No, you can't. It's not tied to your account. There are some features in Power BI Desktop that are like that, but the preview options are not. So it's per installation of Power BI Desktop. You could actually install the store version along with the downloadable version side by side if you wanted to. I don't know why you would want to. Well, I know why I want to, but because I have that set up and it's very confusing. But you have to go and set that for each one of those. Yeah.
Okay.
So what you're seeing here now, after I did the restart of Power BI Desktop, is the new Office ribbon. Well, it's not new. We're used to it from Office. But the cool thing about this is that this is using the ribbon that Office uses, which brings things to bear like we can now use the Office Thesaurus, which, as a part of Power BI, which lights up a whole bunch of new stuff, gives us a whole bunch of new opportunity, and it's really, really cool. So you'll notice the ribbon looks different, and where help and about was right here, it shifted over. So for John and I, muscle memory is taking over, and there's some stuff that's different. Like transform data is where we're going to go in to actually play with our data here in Power Query. And you'll see Power Query's ribbon is still the same as the old one. And you'll notice there's an awful lot of stuff in here. This little pretty chart was an awful lot of work, to be honest, to make happen. So here you'll see, and I've collapsed these into different groupings. I have SharePoint Online, I have the Office 365 platform. I'll just scoot this out a little bit. Because each one of these, when you go out to that site, and I'm going to do a quick flip over here. I'm going to jump out of Power Query and pull it down into Power BI Desktop. Follow this link real quick, because I think it's worthy of just a second's worth of time to paste this in. And
are you using the new Edge browser beta?
I am using the new Edge browser. I'm a big fan. It's working really well for me. I have multiple profiles. But this is where I'm pulling that data from. This is using something called Web by Examples. And so I go out and I pull this data in, and what you'll notice is there's a whole bunch of different stuff happening here. It repeats, but in order to give you different features. This is not a table that's clean and easy just to go out and update from. So I've had to do a lot of manual manipulation in order to get this in there. But as you can see, this is just not simple to go off and pull from. So when we go back in here to our Power Query window, and I'm just going to do it. There we go. You'll notice the data comes across, and I'm having to do an awful lot of stuff. On the right-hand side, these are all my query settings. So what you're seeing here is it starts with pulling from the source, then it extracts a table from HTML, it promotes something as headers, and then I go in and I remove different sets of rows and things like that. I'm not actually clicking into any of this right now. I'm just describing. So if you're wondering why is it showing the three, these 5 dots along the top, it's trying to go out to the site and pull down a new version, which we really don't need to mess with at this particular time. But I'm doing an awful lot of replacement of stuff. I went and I unpivoted some columns and just this took a decent amount of work in order to make it happen. And as you get further down in the in each of these areas, it just gets longer and longer. But once it's all done, it works out really nicely. And you get to see what you have seen over here in the Power BI desktop side of things. We get the reports back and we can start to slice and dice and julienne fries with it. The last thing about this is that the reason why you're able to see all of this data, number one, it's publicly accessible data. I showed you the website that it's coming from. And so I have no problem sharing this information with the world because it's already shared in the world. I'm just showing you a different way of viewing it, right? So this is using something that Microsoft actually published a new blog post about just yesterday. Lukasz Pawlowski from the product team is a principal program manager with Power BI, great guy, published something, a blog post called Heads Up, the publish to web default is changing and it affects who can create public embed codes. Now, John will tell you, I am embarrassed of the fact that I did this work because I used the publish to web, which leverages the anonymous capability of Power BI, but only because it's public data. Okay,
it's the right way to share content in Power BI, isn't it, Jace?
No, John, it sure is not. And with the new blog post, what they're doing is they're actually making it so that administrators can set up who's allowed to publish, so that it puts a gate feature on publish to web, because there should be some people in the organization who have the ability to publish data via the anonymous mechanism to web, and that's okay. But more often than not, what we really want to be doing is something that is called, and I'll pull this blog post across over here as well. So here's the blog post. What we want to be doing is the new secure embed feature, which allows us to embed in either SharePoint, a web portal. We can do either one of those, and it works really, really well. It requires that your user have a Power BI Pro or the Power BI Pro license, or that the report be in dedicated capacity under a premium SKU. But that's part of doing business. That's part of the cost of running Power BI.
This is a really important distinction because there's some advice out there. I'll put the advice in air quotes.
Bad advice.
That says, hey, you can share. You don't need any licenses. You can share your Power BI content in SharePoint. Just use the anonymous feature. And to Jason's point, I mean, up until now, anonymous has been anonymous has been an on or off setting, but there are viable uses when your data is public. The problem with using the anonymous feature is anybody on the planet can go and get at those reports. Period. Full stop. I don't care if you're only sharing your URL inside your firewall. It's not hard to go and search for app.powerbi.com. And find tons of report. Put the word confidential in there, and you'll have even more fun. You'll find all the stuff that's published. So it may seem like a great idea to get around licensing restrictions in the short term. Don't do it unless your data is truly public. So there, okay. I did your rant.
So the problem was really kind of the advice out there, and maybe it was too easy for users to just click on give me the link and make it anonymous, and IT would have no idea about it.
They could have an idea about it, but it's harder to control. So now, in addition to being on and off,
so could everybody else in the entire world. Anybody who went to Google or Bing and typed in app.powerbi.com could go and find your report because it's public to the web.
In fact, so there's a Dave Reuters out of Holland. No, he's out. I think he's out of Holland. Put together a publicly available Power BI report that rolls up using Bing as a source that shows you all of the publicly available reports.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I have a question. Let's say for you, Jason, you kind of showed a lot of the data manipulation you did with that original HTML content to bring it nicely into Power BI. And a question for the chat is, what would you recommend people that kind of know the Power BI interface, know a bit how to create charts from easy content, but to get to that level, what should they learn to learn that data manipulation and all of those things?
Well, there are a couple different answers to that. Hey, John, aren't we doing a workshop at the SharePoint conference in Las Vegas?
In fact, we are, Jason. We'll actually be walking through a number of these steps. We've got an all-day session called Everything You Wanted to Know About Power BI, but we're afraid to ask. We'll be doing that, I think it's on the Sunday, prior to the SharePoint conference in Vegas. So I'd encourage everybody to sign up for that. That's a good source for sure.
Yeah. The other ways, there's a lot of great free content out there.
Yeah.
It's great beginner content. You can go out to Guy in a Cube on YouTube. Adam Saxton and Patrick LeBlanc, they're on hiatus right now until the start of the new year because they're trying to get aligned with all the new guidelines and rules around YouTube content. But they do a lot of great content. They put out multiple videos per week that you can go off and watch. And there's also some guided content inside of app.powerbi.com for guided learning.
Yeah, just on the splash screen when you start up Power BI Desktop, they'll link you to quick learning videos. And it's one piece of advice is to the approach. Don't expect to be able to learn it all at once. Start small, right? Start with some data that might be better formed, and do a search and replace, and that's going to make you feel like a superstar, on some column, or lose a column, and don't be afraid of it. And it just walk before you run, and before you know it, you'll be pivoting data like a pro.
But in terms of learning, like learning path, are there certain topics that should go in front of the others? Kind of, if you have to give like a 5-step guide with certain topics, what would be the order that people should look at?
A 5-step guide.
You can make it 4 if it makes it easier, John.
I can go.
Hit it.
Yeah. So start with data. Honestly, I like starting with some Excel data. It's just one of those things. Like, find an Excel workbook that you're comfortable with, and it doesn't have to be huge. When I worked with, and I've demoed this many times, a workbook that had 10 rows and by 10 columns in it, and just be able to start to understand the data and how it works for you. Get Power BI Desktop, take your Excel workbook, put it in OneDrive for business, and start to work with it there. Start to play with it and start to understand how that works. Then, once you're able to go and get that data, from using Power Query out of your OneDrive for business, then go in and start to work with that data and understand how it manipulates properly in Power Query. And once you have that loaded and you've done that ETL function, because that's what Power Query does for you, then start to play with the visualizations and understand it. And the cool thing about putting that Excel workbook over in OneDrive for Business or in SharePoint is that you can go in, open the Excel workbook, make some changes so you can see how the data will change, then go save it, close it, and then go refresh the Power BI workbook, desktop, and see how it looks.
Yeah, and work with data you're familiar with too. That's probably another guideline. If something that you have intimate understanding of, so you can see how things flow through, that's going to help you get familiar with it. Whether your data is, one of the demos I like to do is thermostat data. Everybody understands about how your furnace. Yeah, I've got an Ecobee thermostat. It gives me every 5 minutes it logs an item into a CSV file. I know how long the compressor's been running, or the heating's been running, what the temperature was, etc. Easy to understand data. It's simple rows and columns, and then build a report off it. Start answering questions you might have, right, over whatever they may be. That it's your own personal data about something like that. I imagine there's a few SharePoint people on the call. Pull data out of a SharePoint list. You'll be amazed at what you can do with SharePoint lists with Power BI Desktop. It will let you at everything in a SharePoint site, like the user information list, the taxonomy hidden list, all that hidden stuff you don't have access to. No problem for Power BI Desktop. Wham. There are some tips and tricks. There's a white paper available in Microsoft Tech community that we might have had something to do with. That walks you through some of the steps involved. I've got a series of blog posts on some of the intricate, some of the complex column types in SharePoint, like lookup fields and manage metadata fields and the whatnot. So I'd go and play with some SharePoint data, and you can start to do some interesting stuff there too.
You've also been playing, John, with a lot of social media data.
Oh yeah.
You're really known. Well, you and Tygraph are really known for doing all of those social media reports that kind of look at Twitter and get, what was it, 1 million tweaks for Ignite or something like that?
Let's
Uh,
see.
Crazy.
130,214 tweets for Microsoft Ignite to be precise.
Okay, it was lower than I thought.
It was 1.4 billion impressions.
Okay, the impressions. I think a lot of people know that report, but do you want to share it a bit, talk about it, and kind of a bit of the logic without going in detail, how you get all of that?
Sure. To start with, though, it was Jason's idea in the first place. I just kind of took it and ran with it. It goes back to, remember the future of SharePoint, the big announcement in San Francisco?
I was there in person. I still have the.
Yeah.
Have it. Wait one second.
Well, as were we. Well, it was. Outstanding.
I think this one came from there, the R2D2
yes.
keychain.
Yeah, there you go. Because it was on May the 4th, and May the 4th be with you. That's right. That was in 2016, it's 2017? I can't. Sorry. Well, in any event, it was right before that. Flow was released into preview, and it was literally the Friday before we went, or before the upcoming week. And I went off and did some stuff with Flow around weather, and Jason went off and did some stuff with Twitter. And we got together and, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? And he was sticking all of his tweets into a SharePoint list, which
I think that was the only demo that Microsoft did for Flow for like a year. Like, look, you can save your tweets into SharePoint list.
Yeah.
Jason is to blame for that. Now I know.
I think Jason jammed about 130,000 tweets into a SharePoint list once. And
I got told not to do that again.
Please stop. But yeah, what you have up on the screen is actually the report from Ignite. And I think it's still being updated. I haven't turned it off yet. And it's something that concept has evolved over the years to become Tygraph for Twitter. It's a product from my company now, but we essentially use it for community events, and we monitor various events, and Ignite's one of the larger ones that we monitor. We do build and things like that as well. But yeah, the idea is to just give you a pulse on the social media activity. So this is your main screen, and this is just a Power BI report, again published anonymously, right? Because Twitter is public data. There's nothing wrong with that. So on the main screen, here's your 130,214 tweets for the time period that's been captured, 1.41 billion impressions, reaching 93 million accounts. That might have been the number you were thinking about as well. But and you can see the tweets that were most retweeted. So Edge, you were talking about Ed, the new Edge, right? Well, they threw out a tweet that addresses the fact that it's now fully cross-platform, and it's been retweeted 897 times. So that was, I guess, the most popular tweet of the event. Who are the top original tweeters versus retweeters? It's pretty easy to sit there and click on retweet all the time and get your numbers up. Some people try to do that. We count that as well, but we've got that all on the main page. You can slice and dice this by dates if you wanted to see just the time period of Ignite. What was that? The around the 5th to
the 9th, I guess, or the 10th, somewhere there.
Yeah, somewhere in there. Let's just do the 11th just to show the slicing. You can see this chart went empty because there's nothing in the past 24 hours for that time period, right? So that's essentially how that works. So you can do searches on all kinds of things, and including the overall sentiment for the conference. You can see it was 0.77, which 0.7 would be considered good. So it's above average so
you use Azure Cognitive Services for that.
That's what's part of the magic going on behind the scenes, is we're actually storing that sentiment. You could do that with Power BI now. You actually couldn't a few months ago. It's a new feature in Power BI where you can, if you're using Premium, you could, on every reload, you could have your premium capacity calculate the sentiment for you using exactly the same model as the Azure Cognitive Service.
Awesome.
Yeah, and there's multiple pages to this thing. I'm in my actual Power BI tenant, so I'm accessing the menu from the left-hand side versus the bottom, which is what the published item will give you. Actually, what I wanted to get into was hashtags and mentions. So real quickly, and this is what I like to push out, like every day of any event is, what are the top 3 things that people are talking about, and who are the top 3 tweeted accounts? So when you get past all the product team accounts, Kyle Flug was number 1, I guess, as Scott Hanselman was number 2, and TechNative was number 3 in terms of mentioned users, right? So users that were mentioned by other people. And then the hashtags were Teams, SharePoint, and Azure. And Jeff always loves it when SharePoint's in the top 3. I know that much. So he'll get a kick out of that.
And what
all kinds of, not to do it completely to death. One of the ones I really like is a network diagram. If this guy wants to load for me, there we go. This is who's talking to whom within in this case, the Ignite network. And you can see what's the account down here in the middle. I bet you it's Microsoft Edge Dev. No surprise, right? It had all these people retweeting from the Edge Dev account. Well, that's how that account is connected to all these other users. And you can pull out, looks a little like the Death Star, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How appropriate given today. But a little story on that from the SharePoint conference 2 years ago. We were monitoring the Twitter traffic for that. And we noticed there was an island. There was something like this guy, but it was hanging off here on the outside. It wasn't really connected. It was only connected by one account. Then there were hundreds of other accounts that were connected to that one account that were not connected to anybody else. And when you drilled into that, what you could see is it was basically, I don't know if it was Russian or not, but it was one of those automated bot networks with fake news sites. And they had caught on to the fact that the SharePoint conference hashtag was trending and started throwing out news articles and had an army of robots retweeting all from that account. But it was very easy to spot using a visual like this. So that was kind of interesting. But yeah, then there's your standard word cloud, lots of other things around it.
And where do you store all of this data? Because so somebody tweaks it, it's on Twitter, then you have to kind of grab it and put it somewhere for analysis, right?
That's correct. And as it stands, well, we've always stored it in SQL Azure. And that's still the case today, although that's not necessarily the only place it's stored. The way Power BI works is when you refresh the data, when you're reporting on data that's within a data set that's stored in the Power BI service. But it's that data set that needs to be refreshed from some data source, and that always gets refreshed in whole from that Azure SQL database. So that gets done on a periodic basis. In the case of this, it's updated every half an hour. From a Power BI workspace. So SQL Azure is the landing place for the tweets, and the way that the tweets land there has changed over time, and it changed in a big way last year. But that's basically where it's housed.
Do you still use Flow/Power Automate to do it?
We don't. There's a couple of reasons for it. It works like a champ. There's nothing wrong with it, but one of the things I wanted to do was to design it for a little more self-service. We haven't brought anything to market with that, but we've got our own engine that's gathering things. So one of the advantages of having our own engine to do this is we can monitor more than one hashtag at a time. So a given flow in Power Automate, see, I got that right. A given flow in Power Automate can only search for or operate on one search term at a time. So back in the day, when I was monitoring, 5 events with 8 hashtags, you had to have 8 different flows for each one of those events, and then you start to run out of resources.
Yes. And this brings me to another question about packaging. So you still have the MS Ignite one is live, and I guess you've did other ones since, right?
Yep.
And they're all live at the same time. And I think something that Power BI allows you to do that Power Apps and Power Automate don't yet is being able to package reports, right? So can you package it, send it to me as Vlad, and then I can have that same logic, plug in a few things, and it works?
So these are, yes. So there's different things. So this is an anonymously published report. So I hand you a URL, we're done. But I'm going to flip you into what we do with our products, because that's really distributing all of our IP. What our product does architecturally is we gather all of the information for an organization around Office 365 usage. So we're pulling together everything that's coming out of the management API and everything that's coming out of the graph. The graph gives you what you have. The management API gives you what you did. that all gets put that all gets stored in, believe me, big databases, and then fed into some fairly complex data models. So the way we distribute our product is through these template apps. They're called the Power BI template apps. That lets us go into a workspace, configure up the reports and the entire experience, publish it into now Azure Marketplace. So you can go in there. Now an organization can do that on their own. So that's one version of it. So within your organization, that just works. Or us as an ISV, we can go and publish that into that marketplace. You could go in there today and search for tyGraph. We got 5 different apps in there. You can instantiate that in your Power BI environment. It's going to set up a workspace for you in an app, and it's going to show you demo data. But you can then enter in your own data parameters. You'd get them from, in our case, you'd get them from us because we're a web service. So you'd enter those, and then that would populate that data model from either our databases or your databases if you've signed up for us that way. But that way it gets populated. So I think that's a very long answer to your question.
But it still lured me that you basically don't just have the PBIX report. It's a whole app that is published to the Azure Marketplace that you distribute to kind of have it cross-tenant.
There's another angle on that. So that covers off people that are using Power BI, but we may have customers that don't use Power BI at all. They don't have a tenant. They're not interested in it, whatever the reason is. And you can embed these Power BI reports as well in your own application. And it's called Power BI Embedded. And that's mostly an Azure thing, but it's an Azure dedicated capacity is what it is. And you write your application and then you make calls out to that, and then you get to show those reports. So different ways of handling that approach.
Awesome. We see we have about 10 minutes left. I wanted to kind of talk a bit about a topic on staying up to date with Power BI. I think that Power BI, and tell me if I got this wrong, but kind of you guys have big updates every 3 months, right? That's a bit kind of the schedule that it works on.
Every month.
Every month.
Every single month.
Okay. But it's well documented, you know when it lands, you kind of know the date and everything, or it's still kind of the rest. In a perfect world.
It usually lands about the second week of the month.
Okay.
Today's the 18th. It came out on the 16th this month. So
17th.
The post was dated the 16th. So fair enough. Yeah.
So Microsoft does a great job. The Power BI product team specifically does a great job of documenting what is in each month's Power BI desktop drop. And what happens is that there's sort of 4 different things that happen. You get an update to the service that happens first, the Power BI service, that then you'll be able to leverage using Power BI desktop. Then you'll get the gateway update, which allows you to leverage all the things that are new for the service from on-prem. And then we'll get a mobile update as well. So 4 updates per month. And you really, the ones that you get notified about are Power BI Desktop, Gateway, and Mobile. The service just sort of happens. Just like with Office 365, you see these things rolling out. And if you know what you're looking for, you'll see them happening in the service. But most people will never notice that anything is there until the new desktop drop happens and it gets announced, here you go. So the Power BI desktop team does a great job. If you go out to blog.powerbi.com, you'll find this month's update. And probably by Thursday or Friday of this week, the Bifocal show will have done a breakdown of that release as well. So you'll be able to listen to us break down what they've already said they did and giving our own spin and take on all of those things on our podcast.
I should also point out that the team's great from a roadmap standpoint as well. Every 6 months they put out a document and they cover it's all of Dynamics. So it's a lot to chew on. You have to dig to find all of the Power BI. First of all, the Power Platform and then Power BI within that. But then they're going to talk about what they've got planned for the next 6 months, and they for the most part they'll put target dates in there. It's amazing because people don't know this resource exists, but. This is not an NDA thing. You can find that document. They're due for another one, I think, in January. So we'll have a look at that when it comes out. But an awful lot of the stuff that comes out over that 6-month period will have been mentioned in that document back then. They don't always hit the targets, and there's some stuff that shows up that you weren't expecting, that they hadn't announced. But maybe it wasn't a big enough deal to announce. But it's a great document to understand where they're heading.
Okay, so kind of the easiest way for somebody to keep up to date, look at the blog like a normal person, not an MVP like you guys that needs to know everything, but a normal person looks for the Power BI desktop update blog, and then they get a high-level overview of, hey, this is available in Power BI desktop, and this is kind of everything this month.
No, the best thing for them to do is to subscribe to our podcast and wait for us to talk about that blog post. And we'll put it in English words. No, they do a great job with their drop. They really do, and they walk through with videos for each feature. It's really I've not seen another.
And they give you a sample file as well of that they were using for those videos, which is really nice. So you can walk through and you don't have to go hunting, and you've got a sample file that you can download. You have to look at the very bottom of the blog post. It's always important to read the very bottom of their blog post, because they like to trickle out, hey, here's a little tidbit for you. It's really fantastic. The Power BI team does a great job with all of that.
It's absolutely fantastic what they do. Yeah, like I say, I've never seen a team do as good a job with getting that. I mean, BI. The whole point of Power BI is supposed to be making business intelligence usable, and they, since day one, have not lost focus on the usable part of it. They've been focusing a lot on enterprise lately, but not at the expense of the usability. I'm really happy about that.
Awesome.
So, Vlad, I wanted to show one more demo for our SharePoint audience, because I was trying to get John to do his, the demo of that Ecobee thermostat stuff, but that will take a long time.
It does.
So instead, I'm going to show, and John knows where I'm going to go with this. I'm a member of a cult.
Oh no.
Yeah, I do.
How do you know when someone goes to Orange Theory? Don't worry, they'll let you know.
Yeah, so I do Orange Theory fitness. Yeah, I'm not that hardcore. So I'm going to share my screen here, so I've got a SharePoint list, and I do a bunch of different magic in the background to make this SharePoint list happen. I get an email that comes in after I finish a workout, and then I pass that email off to a service called Parser that strips out the right data and then shoves all that stuff into a SharePoint list for me. So here, is all of my fitness data, all the different heart rates and distances and all that type of stuff. And it's all here in this SharePoint list. And what I do is I actually go over to Power BI, use Power BI Desktop, and make myself a nice little chart and graph. And the nice thing is that because I do this automatically, it also, you're not going to see this very well, but on my screen, if you can see it, I have my own little dashboard on my mobile device that works really well. And I can come back over here and you can see that dashboard. There's a lineage view, which is really cool too. But here's my dashboard that will show up on my mobile device as well, which is really nice. And when I click into it, it'll take me off to that report. So with all of that said, I can take very flat data out of SharePoint. And as you can see, there's only 102 rows worth of data here. And this is what I've been able to build with that. And I've got different pages in here. This is not anonymously accessible, folks. This is my own personal stuff. I can go in.
You got to compliment, Jason, that your splat points are way higher than AC's.
Yeah. Well, to be fair,
maybe he made his Power BI report public or something. I don't know how everybody knows that, but
AC occasionally posts his own stuff out there on Instagram or on Facebook or whatever. I'm much fatter than AC is. So for me to get my heart rate up is much easier than it is for him because he's much more fit. So that's really what's going on there. It's not that I'm better than AC, although if you said that, I certainly, that's your own choosing. But he did get me involved in this. So, yeah.
I love the comment on the chat. Is like John said, if you go to Orange Theory, you tell people?
Well, it's just great data to demo because it's very flat and then I can make pretty charts and graphs with it. And it's really useful for me. Like knowing that 6:15 a.m. is the best time of day for me to go to get my heart rate up in the right way. Or, that one coach is better for me than another coach.
I wonder why.
It's useful data.
So, did you actually make any changes? Because I see you had multiple studios, multiple gyms there, multiple things. Is that data just for fun? Like I guess John's Ecobee, just to have a nice demo to show, or
No.
or is it did you make any changes?
So in 2019, I traveled an awful lot. I was on the road almost 200 nights. And one of the great things about this particular, cult is that they're everywhere. So I've gone to 21 different studios because I travel a lot. And so that was just my mechanism of going, I'm curious to see how many studios I've been to. And so that was just a fun little thing for me. But the number of classes actually matters because I like knowing that by the time I'll have hit my 1 year, I'll have almost gone a third of the year and worked out. And that's a huge change for me, for somebody who had a massive operation on his foot 2 years ago, to be able to get back in the gym, transition from a walker to a runner and all of those things and feel better. It's a pretty cool thing. So it's also just gratifying to see all that.
Awesome. And John, just to go back to one of the jokes, while I said your Ecobee stuff is not really useful because it just is heating is turned on 24/7 during the winter, basically.
It's not here.
Coming from somebody from Vegas in the chat that I know.
Well, the fun is that John's able to actually tell why he had such a horrible crop in the garden this year because he was able to see. Well, because we also we're giant weather geeks, so we bought matching weather stations. Partly because we like to have fun and talk about it in every show. So that we do on, so we actually have all of that data streaming into a data set as well as into an Azure SQL data set database, so we can go back and compare. But John's able to mash up the weather data with the thermostat data, so he can also complain to his wife when she turns on the heat too much.
So you guys have matching weather stations.
We do. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I got it first. I got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not like we got matching tattoos of each other's faces or anything like you and Seb, dude. Come on. That was a little bit far. I think that was a little bit much for you guys to do, but still, I applaud you. I think it's really great.
Hey, as long as it's not visible, only select few.
That's right.
I didn't ask to see that though, Vlad. That.
What are you talking about, Jason? What happens in Vegas should stay in Vegas, not on the Twix show about the conference in Vegas.
Well, but it's coming up in Vegas, so just reminders that those things don't have to happen in Vegas. We're civilized now. So when is that? What are the dates of the conference again?
Well, I think we actually have a nice video from our producer sponsor. As we're nearing the top of the hour, we actually have a really nice promo. I don't know who will be in the promo today, but Lyman, let's maybe show the video from our producer sponsor, SharePoint Conference.
Work hard, but it's also a place that people have a good time together. Third time will definitely be the biggest extravaganza.
Community and conferences like these definitely turns lonesome into awesome.
Awesome. Well, this was the last show of the year. Thank you very much, Jason and John, for being here with me. It's been an awesome show, really informative stuff on Power BI, and a bit of a few bad jokes on the rest of the Power Platform as well.
Hey, it's what we do. It's
They
been a
write
pleasure spending some time with you, Vlad. Thank you again, and look forward to an awesome 2020.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And by the way, Jeff, since you've been making fun of Canada in the chat, I just want to remind you, since I just saw the video from SharePoint Conference, in May it was too cold in Vegas to have a pool party, and we had to take that party inside
Yep.
in Vegas. I'm sure if we had that in Canada, it would have actually happened
In May,
inside.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
in May, yeah, it could have
Yeah.
happened. We actually have in Montreal, we have an exterior music festival in January called Igloo Fest, very appropriately.
Yeah, but you
But
guys are nuts.
Hey, you're welcome to join us anytime, John, in January for the weekend, anytime you want.
Careful, I might take you up on that.
Bring it on. But thank you very much, everybody, for watching. Remember to follow the channel. At the top right of your screen, there is a heart icon that you can click on. This way, you get notified every time we go live. And now let me talk a bit about the next show. I'm too used to saying next week's show, but we're actually going to be taking a small break for the holidays. So the next time we come on is January 15th, and we're going to have a really great topic, which will be Project Cortex with two great people. We're going to have Chris McNulty from Microsoft, and we're going to have Agnes Molnar, which is an MVP, really expert in everything search and metadata and things like that. So those will really complement each other together. I'm going to be really silent on the next episode because I don't know a lot about Project Cortex. I don't think that many people know a lot other than what was publicly posted. So we're going to have our great experts introduce us to Project Cortex and how it will actually help enterprises achieve more. So thank you very much all for joining us. Have a great holiday period. Take some time off of work and enjoy the snow or the sun, depending on where you are in the world, and see you all in 2020. And don't forget to watch John's and Jason bifocal show to see their Power BI predictions for 2020 and see if they actually got some of them right for 2019. Or listen, not watch their podcast. My bad.
Have a good one.